Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast with Mike and Mike. Sales is a thinking process. This podcast will help you learn about what works in sales, how to hone your skills, and increase your success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm here with Mike Simmons, the co-founder of Catalyst Sale. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody. How are you? I
am outstanding, except I'm a little excited, more than a normal day, because I know what's going to happen on this episode, and I'm so excited about it. First we've got a dual guest. That's only happened once or twice, so that's pretty exciting. And then once we say who our guests are, then I think the fun starts. Tell us who we're going to talk to and why you asked them to be on the show.
We're going to talk to Todd and Dan, who are the co-authors of Inbound Organization. And Dan was on the podcast before. You remember him talking about the importance of building rapport. You'll notice Dan, as soon as he starts talking, he brings the energy. Probably will drop a couple of booms in here, and really look forward to the conversation. So Todd and Dan, thanks for joining us.
Well, before we get started, let me just say it took me a week or two to recover when we had Dan on the show before, and that's Dan Tyre, and Todd is Todd Hockenberry. So welcome, Dan and Todd.
Thanks for having us.
This will be awesome. 30 minutes of total mayhem. It will be insane, right? And you'll get all the knowledge from Todd. You'll get all the big energy. We love Mike Simmons. We love the Sales Catalyst podcast. Oh my goodness, right? Come on. You guys know this is quality content. We're trying to help you grow, and we'll give you all of the opportunity to understand the foundation of the inbound organization.
I almost want to step back and just let Todd and Dan interview each other.
You could do that. And Jody, I was just going to say, imagine how you would feel after writing a book with Dan. That's how I feel, right?
Oh my goodness.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us. And as we were talking before we turned the mics on, Todd's got a pretty interesting quote. I'm going to steal this from you, Dan. I did have this in my notes beforehand, but Dan and Todd both brought me up to speed on the idea of a briefing, like a pre-call briefing that we should have before doing these podcasts instead of winging it like we do on the Catalyst Sale podcast. And you guys, for the people who've been around here with us since the beginning, remember we were really scripted on the front end. We actually gave Jody the questions to ask us, and we decided that did not represent, one, I didn't feel very comfortable. I felt like we were a bunch of parrots. And two, it didn't allow Jody to really lean into his voice. But yeah, Todd, one of your quotes here is, everyone wants to grow, no one wants to change. Why don't we kick off with that? What does that mean to you?
Before I get into that, I'm going to talk really quick about the briefing document that you said, because I think it's relevant to salespeople, right? You brought up a really good point. There's a difference between scripting and preparation, right? You were talking about scripting coming off as kind of stilted and inauthentic and fake, whereas preparation is, I have thought through all the potential questions my prospect or my customer might ask me, and I'm ready with an answer no matter what they ask me. I never get asked a question that I'm not prepared to answer. That's the difference. Okay, so everybody wants to grow, nobody wants to change. We're human beings, right? We like the way we're doing things. We think we're smart, right? We're afraid of change sometimes. And I don't think it's any secret now that buyers have changed. If you've got a cell phone in your pocket, then you know buying has changed. But if you're still running down the same road with you're thinking about your quota and you're thinking about following some scripted methodology of sales funnel where you go through a prescribed series of steps every time, then you're not where you need to be. You're not in the head of your customer, right? You're not changing the way you want to change. You're doing what somebody tells you to do, as opposed to being empathetic and thinking about that other guy on the other side. So everybody wants to grow, but not everybody wants to change. And again, you've got to change. If you want to change, the first thing you've got to change is you, right? If you want more sales, you want to grow, you want to build your business, the first thing you have to change is you. And modern buyers, and what we think is the quintessential inbound thing, is that the buyers want to be helped, right? They want to be helped first. They want you to be empathetic. They want you to know their situation and help them through their problems. So as a salesperson, if you want to change, you've got to change your thinking and change what your focus is.
So my marketing team says, you've got to say this, or my sales manager says, you've got to do this, or my whatever says, you've got to do that. How do I handle that internal conflict inside the organization if it doesn't align with something that's really important to the buyer or something really important to my customer?
It has to align with the buyer. right? And both salespeople and marketers have to agree on a couple of things. First of all, it's 2018. The good old days was all the way back in 2016, right? And in 2016, you put up with stuff. People would call you and they were generalists and you'd listen to them and you were nice. Now, Mike, you're the nicest guy in the world, but if I call you, I don't know who you are, and I'm just being a generalist, right? You're going to be aggravated. You're going to have a short attention span, and even you are going to frown. You might even hang up the phone, right? So the first and most important thing that you can do, which is completely consistent with the inbound philosophy, is you've got to be very, very niche. The thing I love about this podcast, the reason why I've been on it twice, you serve a very specific niche, right? You're going at sales managers and people in educational technology, right? And when you talk about it, they know you're instantly credible, right? Because that's where you live. That's what you do. That's where you spend all your time. That's what we call understanding our target market and getting very, very good at identifying good fit customers. Then what Todd was talking about is the connect, right? And when you engage with those folks, it's no longer about us. You don't call somebody and say, this is what I'm all about. You call somebody and say, I have identified you based on these characteristics. I've researched your situation. And boom, in the first 90 seconds, you got to be willing to help. Now, the great thing about Todd Hockenberry, or the Todd father, we call him, is that he's super smart. And this guy has 30 years in business. I know he looks kind of like a teenager. 30 years in business. He's got 3 patents. And he hangs out in middle America. He goes to industrial companies. He goes to manufacturing companies. And he's been working with these type of sales and marketing organizations for a long time. And so as an executive of HubSpot, I'll say something like, oh, this is the way we engage with an MSPOT, or this is our culture code, or this is the way we do our buyer persona. And I go, you just got to teach your clients how to do it. He goes, Tyre, you're in the HubSpot bubble, right? Get out of the HubSpot bubble. No one does that. No one knows what an MSPOT is in Milwaukee. You got to bring this stuff to the way people are managing their business today. And of course, the impetus for the book, the reason why we do this is Todd and I were on the speaking circuit. Todd has an agency that does inbound marketing. He's done inbound selling. And people would start to talk with him about this management consulting. And we were at a tool and die show. Remember that, Todd?
Yeah.
Southern California, right? Mike, do you know any tool and die people?
I do not know any tool and die people, but I know Southern California.
Okay, that's good. You're halfway there. How about you, Joe? Do you know any tool and die people?
No tool and die people.
They all live in Oklahoma or Nebraska. They are the nicest people in the world, right? They're just they're super nice. They're super thoughtful. They have spent millions of dollars buying these huge machines that take plastic molding and shoot stuff through it and all this stuff that I don't understand. And they would love to walk you through their plant, right? And they would love to understand how to generate more customers, right? And we were explaining, no, you have to practice this inbound kind of process. And they're going, okay, well, what is inbound? It's exactly what Todd just said. You have to have your identification of your customers. You have to track the buyer journey. You have to add. They're going, all right, well, what are the 3 things that we need to do to start inbound? And Todd and I are sitting there stroking our chin going, okay, what we got to do is we've got to lay it out 1, 2, and 3. So Todd said, we should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, we're talking about the same thing. He goes, no, we should really write a book. I go, I'm too busy to write a book. He goes, I'll write the book with you. And my eyes went up. I go, you'll write a book with me? He goes, absolutely. And Todd Hockenberry is the best co-author anybody could ask for. He's smart. He's diligent. When I would miss deadlines, he would calm me down. He would take all the stuff. We co-wrote everything in this book and super proud. I think 295 pages, lots of case studies. If you want to be inbound, the inbound organization will show you how to do it.
Todd, that's a heck of an endorsement for you.
He's my biggest fan. If you go through the process of writing a book, he's right. I think we spent more time with each other than our spouses for about 4 months. But what's cool about it is it's 1 and 1 is 3. And because we both have a lot of experience and it's different experience, we really dug deep on these topics to really try to understand what would matter for leaders and organizations and kind of put together a book that was a reference book. But also, I keep coming back to the word context. We talk about things like sales enablement or sales and marketing alignment or all the kind of stuff that's happening right now that's new. Everything seems new. And we were trying to give leaders a tool that could put those things in context and why they're important and why you have to do them across your entire organization. And otherwise, we see too many companies and even sales individuals, we call it chasing the shiny thing. Something flashes over here. Oh, we're going to run over here and try this app. Oh, we're going to run over here and try that app. Oh, we're going to go do this initiative. Oh, I heard this consultant or some guy said, we're going to go down this path, right? And they just end up jerking around and running around and not really being focused and hitting the goal, right? So we really wanted to try to create a resource that focused people on the things that really matter to build the foundations for an organization that can be successful today and tomorrow and down the road.
And you guys did a really good job with the practical application stuff, the stories that are built into the book where people are applying the concepts that are discussed. What I think is really interesting is we started off with this whole piece about everybody wants to grow, but no one wants to change. Yet you just reinforce that all of these organizations continue to change and change and change because they're chasing squirrels and they're just seeing the shiny thing that's over here. And they don't actually stick through and work through their plan to actually execute. They just keep shifting and squirrel chasing.
That's not really change, though. That's playing around the edges and saying, oh, I'm going to adopt a tactic, right? I'm going to try the latest tactic. Oh, video's hot now, so everybody has to do video, right? But if you don't know who you're talking to, why you're talking to, and why it matters to them, it's just another tactic that, guess what? 6 months from now or 6 days from now, it's gone. You're on to the next one, right? That's not change. Change is you've changed your culture. You've changed your mission. You're focused differently. You act differently. Your environment's different because that's what buyers expect today. And if you just chase the shiny thing, you will be not only personally frustrated, you will underperform significantly. Again, inbound organizations are all about creating foundational, philosophical change in how your business is run. I don't want to oversell it, but we feel like in the last 10 years, like Dan said, the fundamental kind of principles of buying have changed. We think that's pretty obvious. What I would say is that over the last 10 years, the way businesses are run has not changed significantly. And that's what we're trying to address. We're trying to address the kind of underlying foundational pieces about how you run a business, how you organize a business, how you think about your business. That's what we're trying to do.
So that's a good transition into the discussion around alignment because, I've been in large organizations, I've been in small organizations. I've seen instances where sales and marketing come together like oil and water. And I've seen instances where they take Dan's words, marketing, and come together and the magic happens. We also see this misalignment between product, between operations, between sales. Many times people in these roles forget that they are focused. They should all be focused on the mission of the organization, which is aligned to the mission of the customer, and that we're all moving toward the same direction. We may use different vocabulary. We may have different skill sets that we bring together. And your experience, both working with customers that you've worked with, as you've pulled together the book, as you've engaged with the community, what are some of the things that we can do as organizations to become better aligned across each of these functions?
That is so good, man. I love it. We're going to get bonus material for the next revision or put it on the website because that's the essence of it. That's exactly right. Right? People would say, all right, I want to do this inbound marketing thing. And you're like, all right, well, what's the mission of the company? And they're like, I don't know, to stay in business. And you go, no, that's not the way it works. Right? And so the three things that we tell people all the time. Number one, you have to know where you are today. So in the book, there's a 16-question assessment that Todd and I have run in workshops and we use all the time, where we ask you 16 questions. It should be answered in 30 minutes, and you'll understand the readiness that you'll have to be moving to an inbound organization. The next thing we ask you to do is to create an MSPOT, right? And when we were developing this book, we were talking about MSPOTs, and I go, all right, well, just pull out the MSPOT. And Todd's like, what's an MSPOT? I go, your mission, your strategy, your plays, your omissions, your target. And he's like, no one has that, Dan. What are you talking about? How do you run a company unless you know the mission? And he's like, Dan, no one has that. Get out of the HubSpot bubble. I'm like, okay, all right, now I got it. That's a whole chapter in the book. We talk about those kind of things, right? Of that, building that philosophy. And the MSPOT is transformational. We use it all the time here at HubSpot, right? And it starts with the mission, right? And the third thing, you start with where you are at today. You understand your MSPOT, and then you have to create the MSPOT, right? Starts with the leadership. Why are you in business? If you can't articulate why you're in business in a way that's customer oriented. I went to lunch with my friend Rachel Leist, who is prominently featured in the book, right? She talks a lot about sales and marketing alignment, right? And she was telling me that before she came to HubSpot, she interviewed, right? And she was looking around and she would say, well, what's the mission of like this business? And the CEO is like, we don't have a mission. We're here to sell furniture. And we're like, no. What's the mission that you have that helps clients? And he's like, I have no idea. And it's a perfect example of if you don't articulate it in today's like almost 0% unemployment, you're not going to attract and retain people who are very socially responsible and motivated, right? The plays are 3 to 5 things that you're going to do to hit your number, right? The strategies, right? Todd is really big in strategies. Those are the demographics that you're going to service. In your case, the sales, ed, tech kind of managers, those kind of things. The O is the mission. And Todd, tell everybody what the mission is.
The things you aren't going to do. There's Dharmesh Shah came up with something called the optionality tax, and it's if you keep all options on the table, it's a tax on yourself and your organization in terms of your ability to focus. So it's really important to mentally take things off the table. So you list the things you aren't going to do. That you could do, it might be legitimate to do someday, but not now. You're going to really focus.
And then you have your targets. These are the things that you have to hit. And then here at HubSpot, every month, we have a corporate MSPOT. It's one page. Mike, any employee at HubSpot, we have a wiki. Do you know what a wiki is?
I know what a wiki is.
Okay. Joe, do you know what a wiki is?
I've heard the term, but I can't say I know what it means.
Okay, you're with all of Todd's customers, right? We talk about what's a wiki? And they're like, no. It's like a bulletin board where you post all this information. Now, the thing about the HubSpot wiki is everybody has access to it and unlimited access to it. You can have an intern post something in response to what JD Sherman, our COO, has posted. And that not only is that allowed, it's respected, it's accepted, right? It's applauded. Right. We're looking for this diverse and an inclusive kind of culture where we want to be inbound, practice inbound so that we can be inbound to everyone else. Right. And so this MSPOT is circulated every month. It's pulled up every quarterly meeting. Right. And everybody knows. And the beauty of it is, Mike, it's one page. Right. Yep. So everybody should know, have a copy of it. And then all of the divisions have corporate MSPOTs. Right. They have like divisional MSPOTs. Some teams even have MSPOTs. Some individuals even have MSPOTs. And so everybody's on mission. Everybody knows the customers. Everybody knows what they need to do. There is never a question of how you service that customer. There's never any confusion. Those type of organizations are going to win. They're focused on the customer. Everybody's aligned around what we're going to do. And as Todd said, what we're not going to do. And they're highly successful.
And as you go through the book, you'll see an example of the MSPOT, some information about how to build out your MSPOT. We'll also include a link to a blog post that was put out just a little bit over a year ago, MSPOTs, The Secret to Focus and Alignment. It's on thinkgrowth.org. Some really great information out there. And this ties into another quote that I've heard you guys talk about. And I forget, I don't know if it's attributed to you, Todd, or it's attributed to you, Dan, but to do inbound, you have to be inbound, which reinforces the point that Dan was just making. Can you chat to that a bit?
Yeah, that's a good one. That goes to the heart of what the inbound organization is. Previously, inbound was really a descriptor of a methodology and a tool set that was a reaction to and a way for people to reach a bigger audience. And then it started to move into sales, and now HubSpot obviously just launched some service tools. So it was really around the methodology, and it's completely valid. The methodology still works. But what we realized is that to really be successful at it, everybody in the organization had to be aligned around the ideas that were being brought into the inbound. They had to understand the persona. They had to understand the buyer journey and what their role is on the journey. This is why alignment is so important. So we realized that inbound had to apply to every single person in the organization, because if your marketing department's doing inbound, but yet your sales team doesn't treat them that way. So this is like the cliche would be somebody downloads an ebook and the salesman's on the phone right away calling them and saying, I want an appointment, right? That's not lined up. That's not the sales team being inbound. Marketing might have been, but not sales. A lot of companies have figured that out and got that aligned. What about service, though? What if you've had inbound marketing and sales teams that have used content, been helpful, used technology to really facilitate a relationship, and then all of a sudden the service guys don't act the same way, or the guys that install a piece of equipment, or once you have to go to the payment and process a payment, or you have to deal with a contract and deal with terms and conditions. That's where we see so many relationships break down and customer experiences just get ruined. And I challenge people all the time, and I would challenge your listeners to do this. Think about all the buying experiences you go through as a consumer yourself. Think about all the steps along the way that get broken. Think about, appointments that are broken, times left on hold, information that you have to repeat 17 times in a call, on and on and on. Those are examples of organizations that are not aligned across everybody, every department. So therefore, if you might be doing inbound on the front end, but you're not inbound on the back end, you lose it. So that's where that comes from. To to do inbound now, to really do it well, you have to be that way. You have to get it, and everybody in the organization has to be aligned with it. So they act that way naturally, and then you can actually deliver it.
And this is one of the things that drives me nuts about some of the SDR, AE, BDR type relationships that exist out there, where it's clear that the SDR is just moving you through a process for which they kick you over to an account executive. And then the account executive comes in as the closer, who is going to do whatever the magical thing is that the closer does. And there's not this alignment that's very customer focused, customer oriented. Many times you force the customer to repeat themselves. Many times you force the customer to go through this same process over and over again. And the thing that really resonates for me that you guys are talking about is culture change inside your organization. And we've got to remember, change doesn't happen overnight, especially culture change. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes commitment. It takes making it through the dip. Can you guys talk a little bit about culture change and how that maybe applies to this AE, BDR, SDR role and what any of that, those comments make, you guys think?
Yeah, let me take that. So first of all, it doesn't sound like you particularly like that, Mike. Being passed off from one person to the next, asking the same questions all the time.
I don't particularly like being passed off from one person to the next, even when I'm in my house. You know, like sometimes my kid passes me off to the next one and then...
I know. It's horrible. And in 2016, you put up with that because that's just the way business... In 2018, you have 20 competitors. They're just going to go to somebody else. Are you kidding me? The first time that happens, you're mildly annoyed. The second time you happen, boom, you're out of there. So the reason why this is so pertinent today is it used to be you could lag around like that, right? There was, okay, it was kind of annoying. Now, all of a sudden, with 19 competitors, if that's what happens, if that's your customer experience, people are out of there and off to the next one, right? Driven by the apps on your smartphone and instant gratification and omni-channel support and the things that you want and you want it now, right? The expectation is people should know who Mike Simmons is before you talk with them, right? And there's like all of this data and research that says it's relatively easy. You just have to understand what's going on. From a business context, you have to have a central view of the customer. And then it's exactly right. You have to change that culture because to practice inbound, you have to be inbound. Because all these people would come up and they say, no, we want to practice inbound marketing, right? And Todd would tell them how to do it. And then the salespeople would call up and qualify. Are you a $3 million company or more on the Connect call? We're like, no, you can't do that. You just ruined that relationship. You just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to that person to your website and it's over. Forget about it, right? You were just rude. And they're like, okay, now we get it. We got to be a little bit nicer. And so the sales and marketing part would do it. And then like Todd said, it goes all the way to service. And the service says, well, we don't know anything about that, right? The book also talks all the way to the back office. So we have inbound legal, inbound finance, right? John Kelleher is the chief counsel of HubSpot, has an entire chapter of how he's reached out to try to make the legal process much more customer oriented because they understand this inbound, because they understand everything that they see has to be through the customer lens. And the first time that you don't have that experience, right, maybe you'll cut them a break. The second or third time, it could have a serious impact on the long-term relationship that you have with that customer. The culture is everything. You can't practice inbound unless you are inbound, unless your people understand, right, what the mission is, unless your people understand who makes decisions, unless people understand that it's okay to like question, unless they understand who the buyer personas are, and that they understand that everything that you do is oriented towards that customer satisfaction and buying purpose.
So one of the other things that you guys talk about, and I think this builds on your point, Dan, is that in everything that you're talking about right now is inside the organization. But then you guys get into the inbound ecosystem, which expands beyond the organization, starts expanding into partnerships, starts expanding beyond those traditional boundaries. Can you guys talk to that?
Yeah. I love the idea of the ecosystem because there's a quote from the book. We adapted it from, actually it was General Stanley McChrystal. He said in relation to fighting insurgencies in Afghanistan, I think it was, he said to defeat a network, you had to employ a network. And the idea is that it's the same idea now, right? Your company isn't an island. You have to create, and individuals, right? You have to individually create networks to be able to solve all the potential problems that your clients might have. And your network's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're a software service provider, you might have partners like us. You might have application developers who build add-ons to your software. But even if you're, say, a manufacturing company, you have partners, you have vendors. You might have distributors. You might have associated companies in an industry association. All these things are your network, and this is your environment and your ecosystem. And you have to apply inbound ideas to all of those relationships. You have to add value first. You have to put people first. You have to be helpful in those relationships. You have to think about how they're going to be successful. You're probably going to develop personas for your partners. You're going to develop a journey. How do you create a relationship with this partner that's successful? You're going to apply all the ideas around inbound to all of those relationships in your ecosystem. And if you're creating an ecosystem of help that is kind of delivering that value to your customers, you're going to create a lot of competitive advantage. It was an interesting story, Dan. I don't even remember if this made the book, but I love you. Dan told this story about a guy who sells refrigerators in Boston. And he figured that he could service a refrigerator customer within something like 20 miles of his store. Once you got outside of 20 miles, you weren't going to drive, they weren't going to drive. So he just built relationships with all the other refrigerator companies and repair places, around the state. And whenever somebody reached out to him that wasn't in his radius, he just handed it off. And it worked because then they would hand things to him, and he built value in his relationship. This guy understood the ecosystem idea. So, I see it too often. I just walked out of a 2-day client meeting this week where the client clearly has contempt for their distribution network. Oh, they're stupid. They're dumb. They don't get it. I've seen it with rep networks. I see our vendors are terrible. That attitude comes through, right? You have to have an empathy, and you have to create a persona, and you have to understand their journey and bring value and help along the way to those people. So the ideas aren't just internal, they're external. And I would say the same thing to individual salespeople. I know I cultivate a large network, and I try to find partners, mentors, people that I can learn from, people that I can give referrals to, people that I can help that are outside of my world. I'm building a relationship here in Orlando with a large accounting firm. Well, I'm in sales and marketing and management consulting. What does that have to do with an accounting firm? Well, the way I tell them is, who has all the beans, and the ones that need more beans. So I help them get more beans. So we work together to help their clients. And I'll go into their office and do a lunch meeting, and I'll do a free lunch, and I'll answer questions, and I'll give them some, an hour's worth of consulting. And what I get is exposure to their clients, and what they get is they're helping their customers with one of the problems they have. So, and again, just be creative. You've got to create an ecosystem to win out there today. You can't be an island. You can't be a lone ranger. You got to build an ecosystem around your value.
It kind of makes me wonder why we're not getting referrals from our accountant.
Have you asked?
You haven't asked.
Exactly.
Dan, that's the mistake. We've not asked.
I know.
You know what? You know where my next call is after we wrap up this podcast?
I love it.
So guys, one of the things that's coming to mind here as we're talking through this is at an individual rep level. And what are the changes that an individual rep has to go through, and how do they apply this in their day-to-day work? Can you guys speak to that a bit?
Sure. So reps are different now. In the old days, reps were information misers, right? What they did is they gave basic information to buyers, and they were always in control. Over the last 10 years, with the emergence of the internet, right, I think it's somewhere around 93% of all B2B and B2C purchases start with an online search, right? So now people do more and more of the research on their own. Salesperson has to morph. Salesperson has to be a consultant. Salesperson has to make some tough decisions. There is a chapter in the book about someone who came to HubSpot and wanted to buy HubSpot software. And this great salesperson, David Winehouse, reviewed what they were looking for, assessed the situation, and said, no, you're not ready. And they're like, no, we want to buy. And he's like, no, you're not ready. And they go, no, you don't understand. We want to buy. He's going, I'm not going to sell it to you because you're not going to have a good experience, right? Do you know how hard that is? How many salespeople do you know when somebody's going, I'm ready to give you the PO? He's like, I'm not going to take it, right? And then this organization, Local Yokel in Las Vegas, they tell the story of they went on this journey. They came back a year and a half later, and they were like, Winehouse was right. We weren't ready. Now we're ready. Then they signed up, and they found him at this event, and they were like, I'd never had a salesperson do that before. Be so confident in whether it worked or not that they would refuse taking the business. And it highlights how difficult it is to be a salesperson in 2016 at the time, where you really have to know whether it's going to work or not. Because in the old days, if you bought software that didn't work, it was shame on you. Today, if you're not happy, right, that impacts everyone, right? So a salesperson has to morph or migrate quite consistently to make sure that they understand that niche, understand that buyer experience, have a positive buyer experience focused on what the customer really wants to get out from starting a relationship.
So, and we have a number of learning professionals that listen to this, and I really want you to hear what Dan just talked about there. It was being able to say, no, this is not the right solution. No, you are not ready. So let's transfer this or translate this into that type of a role that's very service oriented inside the organization, is enabling the organization to be successful. How can they apply inbound practices?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Todd. Yep, you do it.
Okay. It's not just about solving a particular problem. Like somebody may say, well, I need to fix problem X, but you as an expert need to be able to say, wait a second. They said, like in my world, if somebody came to me and said, oh, we need to have a retreat to figure out what our mission is. And if I just said, oh, okay, I'll sell you a retreat to talk to you about your mission, I don't necessarily know what the problem is or what the outcomes they want are or what success looks like. I'm just doing what they asked for, right? So what you have to do as a salesperson is you've got to really dig deeper. You've got to understand what success looks like. And you've got to understand what the outcome is they want. And again, it's not always obvious. It might be a fear of a loss. So really you're delivering something that's avoiding a loss as opposed to achieving a gain. So it's about the success of the other person. And your company and your personal mission needs to be about helping those people be successful in their definition of success, not yours. In Dan's example of Local Yokel, the salesman would have been successful in that he closed the business, but if the company would have failed, he clearly didn't do his job. They wouldn't have seen success. So again, it's kind of simplified, but the key is internally, if you're delivering that kind of training or those kind of educational resources, you've got to understand what the outcome is, right? I've got a daughter who's a freshman in college right now, and her outcome of college is not to get a college degree. And it's not to get straight A's. She'll probably get straight A's, but that's not her goal. That's not what is success for her. Her success is going to be to build a network, to build a skill set, to understand a lot of very specific things she wants to learn and know when she walks out of college. It has nothing to do with grades. She really doesn't care about grades. She'll nail the grades, but she doesn't really care about it. So it's a different definition of success. So as a salesperson and a trainer or educator, you have to understand what that person's specific outcomes and goals are. That's different than just solving a problem.
And there's a lot of focus these days on MRR, monthly recurring revenue, ARR, annual recurring revenue. If you are not meeting customer needs, you may generate that first bit of revenue, but it is not going to recur. And
sure,
you've lost. So, I mean, this is an important aspect to understand for everybody that's listening out there. When you are evaluating your business, how well do you align with the customer's objectives?
Isn't that the definition of churn, though? Churn is that they weren't successful.
Yeah.
It's a very straightforward definition.
Yep. You want to reduce churn, right? Increase customer acquisition, have customer acquisition be higher than churn. You think that you'll be able to build this business that should continue to sustain and feed itself. So that's a good transition into the future. So when you think about way back in 2016, the old days, now here we are in 2018, in the current days, what does this future look like in 2019 and 2020? What are some of the shifts that you see happening on the buyer side of the equation?
Before we answer that, let me just say that you've got it right there, right? If you're concerned with generating additional MRR, customer retention, and you haven't gone through your assessment, your culture code, your MSPOT, you're defining what your employee persona is, understanding how to align sales and marketing, then aligning sales, marketing, and service, then understanding the inbound back office, right? You are going to run into a roadblock sooner or later, right? And it's likely to be sooner. Inbound is a philosophy, and it's also a tsunami, right? You've already proven, Mike, that's the way in which you want to buy. That's the way everybody wants to buy, right? And the companies that are practicing this will get all of the business, right? The companies that are not will slowly atrophy. And in the future, there's ways in which you're going to be able to aggregate that information. So Todd, talk a little bit about like a seller persona, which is the next phase of the inbound revolution.
I think the best way to think about that is an example that a lot of us probably are familiar with already. If you have Alexa in your house, or you have the Echo, or one of those devices, like I don't know what the Google device is, right? You can create buying profiles. And you can say, I want these products delivered to me on this time frame, or I can just say to my device, buy that for me, right? And it can be based on a profile. And you can say as a buyer, I want this quality, I want this price level, I'm looking for this service. My AI device or my data-driven device over here, just send it to me, right? So again, that's cutting out the middleman in terms of even actually going online and having to pick the product on Amazon. They're going to send it to you based on your buying patterns. So start to apply that basic model to your sales relationship. If you're paying attention to Salesforce right now, they're talking about Einstein, and the question they keep saying or asking is, why couldn't this tool someday close sales, right? I mean, why couldn't it do it, right? If it has all the data and it has all the persona stuff and it has the background, why couldn't it close sales? You've seen lots of product configurators out there. I see them all the time. Customers are self-serving. They're going in, picking their options. Boom, 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 right? Carvana just opened up the street for me. I mean, my goodness, you can buy a car, go press a button, get out of the vending machine, sign a paper, and drive away. You don't have to talk to a salesman, right? It's coming. The buyers will create profiles of their likes, their outcomes, their goals, and these tools and more. I can't imagine it won't affect just about every industry. It will then give to the buyer what they say they want based on their profile. Now, that's not a technical description of what's happening. I'm not a futurist. I'm just looking at the world saying that's where we're going. And if you're not inbound, right, if you're not doing the things that buyers today are asking for, there is no chance to be successful with them down the road.
Sales is a service-oriented profession. It is about helping people navigate whatever those challenges are between solving the problem that they have and getting the solution in place. And those challenges could be internal challenges that they have inside their organization that you can help them navigate. They can be external challenges. But your role as a sales professional in this model is to help people navigate through that last bit. And if they're in a situation where they can move 50 yards down the field and you're going to help them navigate the next 50 yards, great. If you're in a situation where they can move 95 yards down the field and you're going to help them navigate the next 5 yards down the field, even better. But take that service-oriented mindset. As we wrap up here, guys, where can people go to learn more about what you're doing, where you're going to be, how they can get the book?
Well, the book is Inbound Organization. You can find it at booksellers anywhere. Amazon's got it. Just search Inbound Organization. It'll come right up. You can also go to inboundorganization.com. Tons of resources there. There's quotes. You can get it. You can download the assessment there. You can download a copy of an MSPOT. There's lots of other content type resources there. There's even a bonus chapter case study we did, and we're adding information there all the time. That's inboundorganization.com, and all of our contact information there. You can connect with us there as well. That's kind of the hub for the book, and all the information is there that you're going to need to learn about us in the book. Awesome. And we will add each of those links into the show notes as we usually do. Guys, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Awesome conversation. Look forward to having you back on at some point in the future. Our pleasure, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jody. Dan and Todd, thank you so much. This has been a treat. Dan, you always just set the show on fire when you're here. Boom! I'm better with the Todd father, right? We have a ton of fun, man. He's all smarts, and I'm all getting people riled up. Yeah, great job. This was a great time. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.